morning. When we talk about risk compensation, this is a very well studied concept, not just in ART programs, but also for when male circumcision was rolled out, when microbicides were found to be partially protective. Then people have mainly focused on what would this new intervention do to condom use, and what would it do to the rate at which people form new partnerships. And to a lesser degree, people have thought about, would this influence the level of concurrency in the population. So there are many studies out there. This is just one of them, published recently by the Africa Center on where the key point is that as the ART program rolled out in South Africa, there doesn't seem to be much evidence for neither reduced condom use nor increases in the rate at which new partners are acquired or higher risk contacts are made, and also on the prevalence of concurrency. There doesn't seem to be a clear relationship. However, those are not the only ways through which an ART program and behavioral changes that come with it could impact the risk that HIV-negative people run for acquiring HIV. There can also be changes in the way people choose partners, even if at the individual level, condom use and partner turnover rates are unchanged. So this is just a caricature of what might happen. The blue circles are HIV-negative people. In the naive scenario, some are linked to HIV-positive people on ART, and others are linked to HIV-positive people off ART. On the right-hand side, you see the changing dynamic in the network if all the positive people on ART decide to only form relationships with each other. Essentially, the negatives are now forced to form more relationships amongst themselves and with people who are positive but not on ART. And we don't know if this happens, so we call this ART associativity. We don't know if it happens, and if it happens, we also don't really know how big this effect is and to what degree this really happens in populations. But there are a few, there is anecdotal evidence, and there are also a few logical mechanisms we can think of why this might occur in population. So a first way would be if when you're single and you're on ART, you preferentially look for people who are also on ART. And why would you do that? Well, it makes social and psychological, there are social and psychological advantages to having a partner who's also on ART. You can share some of the pill burden, you can give each other tips, you can support each other. Another mechanism would be that if people who are both on ART, couples who are both on ART, are actually more stable, and so in the long term, that would also drive up that prevalence of ART concordant couples. And a third mechanism would be that if both partners are positive, one is on ART and the other one isn't, the one who's not would be encouraged by his partner or her partner to start ART. And if that's the case, then also we would see at the population level some degree of associativity by ART status. What we did is we constructed a very simple mathematical model. It's not dynamic, so it cannot project into the future. It's a risk equation, and so we look at the situation from the point of view of HIV-negative people, and we ask, how does ART impact the risk of their risk of acquiring HIV, their instantaneous risk of acquiring HIV, and how does that impact of ART depend on prevalence, ART coverage, and this unknown factor called M, the associativity mixing index. This is the situation for a very low HIV prevalence setting. 1% of the population is HIV positive, and of that 1%, 30% is on ART. If now the HIV positive people on ART say we no longer want to form relationships with anybody else, but only with ourselves, then what would happen from the point of view of the negative people is that some of the links they previously had with, or they would have had with people on ART now have to be redirected. And the majority, as you can see, if this is a proportional redirection, would be done by forming more relationships with other negative people, and only very few relationships would be additionally made with positives not on ART. So in this case, assortativity would provide extra protection, and it would enhance the impact of the ART program. However, if you have a setting where coverage is equally low, so about 30% of the positive people are on ART, but prevalence is in the region of 30 or 35%, which is the case for some particular settings in Southern Africa, especially when you zoom in on certain age groups, then the redirection, the restructuring of the sexual network under this scenario of ART assortativity would cause a lot of HIV negative people to be sort of forced to form more relationships with HIV positive people not on ART, and that could increase their risk. So more formally, this is how the ART impact in this simple risk equation would go up or down as a function of prevalence, ART coverage, and by that we mean the fraction of positive people who are on ART, and the IRR of ART, so that's the intra-couple effectiveness of ART. So IRR of 0.04 would be that couples on ART have a 96% lower chance of transmitting than couples who are off ART. And from this graph you can see that in most cases ART assortativity would be a good thing, and it would enhance the impact of the treatment program. Only in the case, as I shown in the previous sketch, where you have high prevalence, low ART coverage, and very effective programs, so couples where ART is in place or protected against transmission, there would be a jeopardizing effect of ART assortativity. So it's plausible that in some settings in Southern Africa we currently have a slightly lower impact of ART than we would estimate from naive models that do not take into account ART assortativity. However, as we move, so this is again the same picture but now presented in a slightly different way. So you can see on the left-hand side, as you go up on the y-axis from no to very high ART assortativity, the impact would go up in the low HIV prevalence scenario. On the right-hand panel for 35% prevalence, if the treatment works very well, people are excellently adherent, and the suppressive effect is 96%, then ART assortativity would not be such a good thing, because then the impact could go from 28% to 22%. If adherence is worse, then ART assortativity would be a good thing again. But what is important is that when we move away from the low coverage regions to higher coverage regions, so as countries change their CD4 thresholds or drop them altogether, maybe in the future, and we move towards 60, 90% of people who are positive who are on ART, then the message is very simple. If there is this thing called ART assortativity, it would only be a good thing, and it would only enhance the impact of the ART program. So that's the summary of this model. And again, we don't really know what degree of ART assortativity is in place in various settings in the world, and so this requires empirical research to get a handle on that and to evaluate the model again. And also we want to expand this with more dynamical models that can make longer term projections. Thank you very much.